Laura, and I'll let you take it over from there.
All right. All right. Welcome or welcome back if you've been participating in this series up to this point. So, and I think, did you all have them already sign in? Can you tell how, if they're here? Otherwise they can sign in with their first name and their last name and the name of their favorite recording artist. Just, that might be sort of a fun way to start. You can just put that in the chat. And then what I would love to hear from you, either in the chat or by unmuting and showing us your face, or just even unmuting, letting us know what's been happening with your use of motivational interviewing. So what have you been thinking about? What have you tried? What did you try and it worked? What did you try and it didn't work as well and you were surprised? Anything that has flitted past your brain about MI, I would love to hear about it. Again, you can unmute, you can chat, whichever one you're most comfortable with is totally up to you. You were only thinking about eating and you didn't think anything about motivational interviewing over the long weekend. Okay. Well, then assuming that using silence as a tool, that's what you're all doing right now. Yes, silence is a very effective tool, because see, just exactly what you wanted to have happen was I broke the silence because I got really uncomfortable, and then I said, okay, fine, we'll just move on. That's what will happen if you use silence with the people you're talking to. Moments of silence to encourage patients to speak. It worked for some, and then others are just quiet. Yeah, and you can reflect on that quietude, right? You can say, like, you're not quite sure what to say, or you're just, you're having a hard time just being even here today, or thinking about this stuff is difficult, and just reflect on their non-verbal silence. Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's pick up with where we left off. So we left off somewhere in the vicinity of you doing something with reflections. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. And I have that there was an exercise on page 13 of your packet, and I'm wondering where you all got to on that exercise. There's some simple and complex reflection prompts on page 13. When you look at your page 13, is it all filled in? Did we get halfway? About where did we get? I need to come up with a system to bookmark where each and every single group gets. You got through that, Laura. Okay, thank you. And then did we move on into open questions? Did we get a little bit of open question done? Squished, I think we squished it in at the end. And then did we talk about the beautiful art of affirming, where we look for people's strengths? Okay, Robin is giving me the no. Okay, great. So this is what we're going to do to start out. We're going to do a paired exercise where what your job is going to be, what we're going to intentionally, get warmed up around, is reflections. And so what we'll do, I'll put you in a group with just one other person, not a group, it'll be a pair. And what your job will be is to ask the person one open question. What's one thing that you're figuring out in your life? And then let them talk for 3 minutes. Now, those of you who are the talkers, don't get so wrapped up in talking that you don't take a breath. Because what I want the listener to do, unlike when we listened silently in that exercise, what I want you to do is I want you to reflect. So they say something and you reflect. And they say something and you reflect. Okay? Just reflections. So you can start with an open question. What's one thing you're figuring out in your life? And then they, and you reflect, and you reflect, and you reflect. Yeah. Okay. So only reflections, just for 3-4 minutes, and then you'll switch. And I'll tell you via the broadcast that it's time to switch. Okay. Now you might think, before I go into a pair and do that, I have a few questions about reflections again. I've forgotten a few things. Or you may be sitting here going, yeah, I got it. I know how to reflect. I got it. So where are you at? Do we need a little review? Are you ready to go? Where are you at? Laura tells me we did that big reflection exercise, but that was weeks ago. And adults have a tendency to sometimes forget things. Are you using your silence again? You're just really good at silence. You're really practicing that. Anybody feel like you need a review? You also have a short review might be helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Stacy and Laura. All right. So what are reflections? What do you remember about reflections? We practiced them. We talked about them. You did that whole worksheet. What about them again? They must be important because I'm starting the workshop with reminding you to practice them. So we know they're important. We know we're supposed to do them, and we know we're supposed to do them more than we ask questions. Yep, learning a person's language. So they're simple and complex. Yep, and the differences between simple and complex are that one just says what the person said. So when you don't know what else to say, you're like, I don't know. Just repeat what the person said. Change the words around a little bit maybe, but just repeat what they say. What that will do is it invites them to keep talking. And then you can be like, oh yeah, now I know where I want to go. Yep, reflect where you want to go next. Yes, Robin, exactly. What you reflect is essentially, reflections are an invitation to the person to keep talking. When you reflect something like really specific, what you're saying is, I'm inviting you to go in this direction with whatever you're talking about. So there's statements where you just say where you want what the person said, and the thing that you reflect is where they'll go next. Yeah. You have, as a part of your materials, we gave them the OARS guide, right, Robin, Sue? So you have, and maybe we could put that in the, or is it in the registration stuff? Is that where it is? Where do they find that? Salmon sheet. Yes, it is the salmon sheet. I don't know that everybody photocopied it onto salmon. Or did you give it to them at training and they, well, no, there wasn't a face-to-face training. We're not giving anybody anything. What am I thinking?
It's in that link that I had up, but I can
Oh, perfect. Yeah. Just a reminder that what's on that sheet are some stems, some ways to start reflections. It's as if, it's almost like you're thinking, you're wondering. Those are all starters for reflections. And then if you say what the person said, it's simple. If you go beyond it, it's complex. And last time we went over a whole bunch of different kinds of complex reflections. And by the end of the day today, we're going to revisit those after we learn a little bit more about the technical aspects of motivational interviewing and what we really want to be like pushing on to get the person to move towards change. So before we do that, we're going to get ourselves warmed up around reflections. You're just going to do about 3 minutes of reflecting. You're going to ask the person, what's one thing in your life that you're figuring out? They talk, you reflect. They talk, you reflect. Don't ask questions. Just try to stay reflecting. If all you can do is simple reflections, and you can do simple reflections for 3 minutes, I think you're a rock star. That's good enough. If you can do a couple of complex reflections, they say something, you add a feeling, they say something, you do a double-sided, they say something, you amplify, then you're all good. Okay. So we are going to continue on with our journey. And when we very first talked about motivational interviewing, back when you were in the, in the learning part of your introduction to the CoCares model, we talked about how engaging is the who, right? Like it's the who. And we've been working on some of those skills, right? We've been working on listening. We've talked about the spirit of motivational interviewing, which is partnership, acceptance, compassion, and evocation. So that's our mindset. We show engagement by asking more open questions than closed. We affirm people. We're going to talk about that. We're going to shine a light on that in a little while. We reflect things and we summarize, right? Like that's the who part. Focusing is the what part, right? Like what are we talking about? And that's the behavior, thought, or attitude change that you and the patient have chosen to talk about. Does it seem more urgent or necessary to talk about their depression, their use of alcohol, their anxiety, their diet and inactivity, the way that they're managing their diabetes, their hypertension? Like, what is it that you're going to focus on in that particular co-cares conversation? And then once you know who they are, what's kind of going on with them, and what you're going to talk about today, then we move into evoking. And in order to evoke, what you have to do is you have to recognize change language. So before we go much further in our journey of adding in some skills, I just want to talk just pretty briefly about what change talk really sounds like. Like we've been kind of doing some things where it's like, well, change talk leans in the direction of change. Change talk is really good. I want to make sure that I'm focusing more on change talk than on stuck talk. But what is it really, really? Have I been muted this whole time, or did I just accidentally mute myself? Okay. Mute. All right. So change talk, again, is any patient speech that favors movement in the direction of change. It's this kind of a lean. It's what you're going for. It is essentially motivational gold. It is the thing. It is the thing that sets motivational interviewing apart from other person-centered styles of communication. Other styles of communication, other ways to help people focus on engaging and focusing, which is picking a topic, and then certainly other styles of helping people focus on planning. And as a matter of fact, that's sort of the major focus, right? It's like, who are you, what's wrong, and how are we going to fix it? This focusing in on change language and getting the patient to emote, to say, to put out change language into the universe is where motivational interviewing gets its superpower. So again, change talk is any talk that leans in the direction of change. This is what we know about it. It predicts behavior change. It predicts behavior change. The more you can get your patient to have change language fall out of their mouth, the better off they're going to be, the more likely they are to change. If you are being really heavy-handed, overly paternalistic, you're doing all the work, you're trying to get them to just make a plan to change, and you're doing that right out of the gate, you are not going to get change talk from them. If we go too far, too fast, people stop change talking. It's enhanced by your ability to listen, and you have more to do with the amount and strength of change language that comes out of the mouth of the patient than the patient does. You can have the same patient, and if Ginny is doing everything right and is not being confrontational and is listening and using her OARS skills and respecting the spirit of motivational interviewing, she is more likely to get change language than if Robin is doing not doing motivational interviewing and is just telling the patient what to do. Robin's not going to hear any change language, and it could be the same patient. So whether or not you hear change, if you're not hearing change language, don't necessarily look to the client and blame it on them. Think, what can I do as the helper to better encourage change language to be happening? The reason I want change language to happen is because change language predicts change, that's what we're in the business of doing. So these things count as change language. I think I could quit. I've got to do something about my drinking. I'm going to exercise every day. I want to get my kids back, and I can't do that unless I quit drinking. I'd like to have better control of my blood sugars. All of those things count as language leaning in the direction of change. So I want to expose you to some different kinds of change language. People talk about what they want or wish or can, or these are my reasons for doing this. I need to, have to, got to, should. So desire. I wish I could remember to bring all my stuff with me. I want to quit smoking. I like the idea of eating better. That kind of language is called desire language. When they're thinking about what they can do, we call it ability language. I think I can take less medication for my pain. I could probably take a parenting class. I might be able to only use on the weekends. I can imagine quitting smoking. They might also give you their particular reasons. We call this reasons change talk. I'd feel better in the morning if I didn't drink. I want to be alive to see my grandchildren get married. Eating more fruits and vegetables would help me to lose weight. And then they'll talk about their specific needs. They have to, got to, should, ought to, or must. I must stop using heroin. I've got to get my act together. I have to eat more fiber. Then there's this next rung, and what we consider this is called the CAT. So what's the first part called? DARN, D-A-R-N. This is the CAT language, and it's commitment, activation, and taking steps. I'm sorry, I was gonna check and see, wake up computer, if I included this page in your handout. I did. It is on page 22 of your handout. So you don't have to write all this down. Sorry, and I'm sorry I didn't say that first. So then there's this next rung, and this is the mnemonic to remember. This is CAT, commitment, activation, taking steps. And what this commitment language is, what it involves is it's that sort of like it's got a little bit more power to it, a little bit more intention and promise, and there's no way I'm not going to do this. So the desire language, desirability, reason, need language is called preparatory. And then I will, I'm going to, I'm ready to, I'm willing to, I'm planning is called commitment language, because it's just got more oomph to it. All of it is called, all of the kinds of change talk are all the desirability, reason, need, commitment, activation, and taking steps all falls under the umbrella of change talk. And nobody's ever going to ask you, well, was that desire talk, valid talk, what kind of talk? What, like, you don't need to know that in the moment. In the moment, for now, what you're focusing on is, oh, that person just said something that makes me think they're going to change. One, pat myself on the back. Because if you're getting change language, you're doing a whole bunch of stuff right. Because change language, remember, does not happen in the presence of practitioners who are not doing things right, who are being confrontational and telling people what to do. They're not going to hear change language. So, all right. Now, unfortunately, along comes sustain language. Remember, that's the stuff that keeps people stuck. And sustain language sometimes uses the same words. It'll talk about, I must, I ought to, I got to, I need, I want. But it's not what they want that makes you think they're going to change. It's what they want that makes you think they're going to stay stuck. I want to eat candy bars all day long. That would not be moving in the direction of change for better diabetic control, would it? No, that's something that's going to keep me stuck. I can't make that happen. That's stuck language. I'm going to eat candy bars all day long. I need to stop talking about candy bars. It's too close to lunch, right? That's stuck talk. What do you hear? What kind of stuck talk do you hear from the patients that you work with? What do they say about why they can't change? What their reasons are for not changing? What's the other side of ambivalence? What do you hear? Nobody here. You don't hear sustained language. Well, that's great. If you're creating that much of a climate where you're not hearing any sustained language. You know, sometimes when I say this, I get this response where I get nothing. But then if I say, remember sustained language, we call it sustained language, but it's really excuses. Like that's sort of what we call it, but we don't think of that in motivational interviewing because that it sounds a little pejorative. But what excuses do you hear from your patients about why they can't change? What do you hear? I've tried it. Nothing works for me. Yep. What else do you hear? I've tried it all. Time and time. I enjoy smoking. Don't even bring it up. Yeah. I can't afford to eat healthy. Yeah. So those, you know, I like smoking. That sounds like it's using it's sounding like desire word, but no, it's stuck. It's not change. So tuning your ears into change, what it does is it helps us then use our OARS skills in a much more what we call technical way. So in the beginning, when we're just getting to know somebody, we're just using our OARS skills just sort of in a free-flowing kind of let me get to know you by being genuinely curious with an open question, or maybe affirming you, we're going to get to that, or reflecting, right? But I'm not necessarily trying to move you in the direction of any change. When you know what change language is and you have a targeted behavior, you've focused and you've moved into evoking, now you're using your OARS skills, but you're using them in what we call the more technical way. Given that we don't have a ton of time together, I want to sort of move towards that technical application a little bit today. So when you're using open questions, that's what we're going to talk about next, in support of change language, you're thinking about, okay, how can I ask an open question? And open questions are on page 10. How can I ask open questions that promote this sense of change language? How can just by virtue of myself remaining curious and asking specifically about change talk, can I encourage more change language? Sorry, my cursor's lost. Okay. So our job is to ask open questions that probe more widely for information, that get at people's behaviors, thought, or their priorities, their thoughts, which is much more likely, their actual experience and thoughts, which is much more likely to get them moving in the direction of change, rather than just you firing one closed question after another at them. Do you like that? Have you thought about that? Are you doing that? People are just like, yes, no, sort of, sometimes. But open questions draw them in. So when you start questions, think about the way that you're starting them. If you have the words, sorry, I have so many windows open here. Have, had, which, how many, how much, how often, did, do, does. If you have those words fly out of your mouth, you're going to bounce your butt right into a closed question. Closed questions do not support us on the path towards change. They are fact-finding questions. If every question you ask is one of these kind of questions, you're just going to be fact-finding. You're not going to be helping them move in the direction of change. If instead you ask questions, what, tell me about, describe, explain, say more about, in what ways, especially in response to change language. So somebody says, I really want to quit smoking. And you say more about that. Or I really want, if I get my diabetes under control, things will just, I'll feel so much better and have so much energy. Describe how that would be for you. So do you see how the open question really gets them to say more about the thing? So open questions aren't just open for the sake of being open. They have an intention. They have a purpose, which is, I really want you to tell me more about that change thing. Now, just one caveat. There are lots of things that you do in your work probably that are just like a whole line of closed questions because there's some kind of an assessment or some kind of an enrollment thing or an intake procedure. When you're doing those, you're going to ask a whole bunch of closed questions, and that's what you do when you're doing that. That doesn't count, right? That's not motivational interviewing. You're not trying to do motivational interviewing. You're doing an assessment. You're doing an intake. So don't feel like you have to make every single question you ever ask open. This is when you're facilitating behavior change in another person, that you're going to focus on having questions be much more open. I really care about what your answer is. Okay, and there's some reminders and hints about open questions on your salmon colored guide. So is this question open? Does it promote engagement? Is it going to help us get at change? Like, what do you think about this? Do you understand the rules or guidelines? Do you understand these guidelines? No. What would you change it to? Type it in, unmute. Don't all type at once. Explain what you understand about the rules. Yeah, nice. All right. Do you need help with something? Is that open or closed? Mike? What's your oh, nope, that's the last one. Sorry. What do you have for, do you need help with something? It's closed. Make it open. Paper towel.
What?
Okay, good suggestions. All right. And have you been taking good care of yourself? Is that open or closed? And how would you, it's closed, how would you make it open? Thank you. Make it open? What do you do for self-care? Talk about the ways you've been taking care of yourself. Nice. What have you been doing to take care of yourself? In what ways have you been caring for yourself? Tell me what you're doing. Yep. Very good. Yes. Very good. All right. And do you have any questions? It's closed. What would you do to make it open? Do you have any questions? Closed as can be. What questions do you have? What could I explain better? What are your questions? What questions do you have? Nice examples. Yeah, good work. All right. So we're going to move on, and then we're going to come back and we're going to pull in reflections that we were doing. We're going to do some stuff with open questions. But before we do that, I want to add the skill of affirmation, and then we'll do some application stuff. Okay? So questions about open questions before we move into affirmations? They're good. Closed questions aren't evil incarnate. We sometimes ask them. When we're doing motivational interviewing, we want to focus on open questions. If we kind of train ourselves to do the open question starters, we're much more likely to do it. So think about just, if you have the word describe tumble out of your mouth, it's like, you know, I'm just going to say describe or tell me more or say more. And then it's like, oh, now it has to be open because I've started it in an open way. It's kind of a little trick. Okay. So affirmations. Affirmations, when I say that word, a lot of times helpers think that what we mean is, that's great. You're fabulous. It's amazing that you did that. I'm so proud, or you must be proud, or that is so impressive. In motivational interviewing, we don't count that as an affirmation. And in some ways we try to avoid that, because what we want is, because this is a partnership and partnership is as important as it is, what we truly want to have happen is we want this other person. We are just the behavior guide. We're not the installer of confidence. We're not the installer of importance. We are the person who draws up out of the patient stuff that they already have, and it's separate from us. It doesn't have anything to do with me. So when I say I'm impressed, or I think that's great, or I'm proud, or that that's amazing, it's me essentially being judge and jury of somebody else's behaviors. And I don't want to be in that position. I got too many patients to worry about. I got too many clients to worry about for me to be blessing or just thinking that, or saying things are good or bad. I don't want to be in that business. So we're going to focus more with an affirmation. We're being much more descriptive than evaluative. We're trying to grow within this person, that we're trying to show them, you have all this stuff. You always had all this stuff. I'm going to point out to you stuff that you maybe have forgotten that you have, or you never realized it, that nobody ever helped you identify that these are things that you genuinely possess. And so statements like this, it takes courage to face such difficult problems. Or thanks for doing all the hard work it took to get here on time. You really care about your family. You want to make sure they're safe. Your willingness to respond to these hard questions shows you're really thinking about this. Or how did you do this? How did you know that would work? Those last two questions are essentially inviting the patient to self-identify attributes that they have. So how did you know that, you know, I don't know, throwing all the sugar into the garbage can would be a strategy that would work for you? Or how did you know that that would be something to try? Or what about you made that possible? Well, because when I put my mind to something, I make it happen. I tend to be pretty dependable. I tend to be pretty organized. I tend, you know, whatever their things are, they're self-identifying them. So either you help point them out or you help them draw up and self-identify. But both of those count as affirmation. So what we're going to do is I want you to read here about Tanya. And when you come across something in Tanya's description that you think is like, oh, Tanya has that going for her, I want you to just type it in or unmute and tell me. What does Tanya have going for her? Okay, so she keeps her appointments. She shows up. She knows that marijuana can be harmful. Yeah, she knows it's important to eat. She's concerned about her smoking. Yeah. All right, so what if I said she's concerned about the harm she may do to her baby? Yes, good. Okay, so what if I do, well, I'm gonna take your ideas. I'm gonna try something and then you tell me what you think about it. So, and I wouldn't do these all in a row because that would be sort of weird, but throughout the conversation, let's say I say things like this. Tanya, thank you for showing up. I'm very thrilled that you showed up here today. And later on, I might say like, oh, I think that's so, you are miles ahead by knowing how harmful marijuana can be for you and for your baby. And a little bit later, I might say something about, I am so relieved to hear that you know about smoking and how important it is to eat healthfully while you're pregnant. And I am amazed that you are, you know, willing to do all this for your baby. What do you think about that? What will Tanya have to put into her backpack or her large purse and leave with if I say those things? What do you think about that? What does she got? What does she got to take with her if that's what I say to her? You think she's got encouragement? I think that's great. You're a rock star. I'm amazed. What do you think that she can take with her that's about her? Yeah, we're pretty used to communicating this way. And so if I say those things, I think you're great, I think you're amazing, this is all good, am I Tanya's partner, or am I going up here? Good girl. Which one am I doing? Am I her partner when I say I'm amazed and I think this stuff is great? Or am I now becoming, have I separated myself from her and that I'm deciding it makes it about me? Thank you, Laura. It makes it about me. And it's not, she can't detach from that. It's like, well, then is she going to come back and then like say, no, I did this and now I did this. Oh, good girl, right? We don't want that. We want Tanya to know that she has all these things. It's not what I think. Because what are you going to do? Are you going to say when you don't think something is good? No. So we don't want it. I don't want it to be about me. And here's one of the tricks of MI. Here's one of the things that helps MI contribute to you getting less burned out. You are just totally not in charge of this person's change. It's not about me as the helper. It's about you as the patient. So instead, let's take this a little bit further, and then we'll see what you think about these. So you said that she showed up. That was one of the things. She kept her appointment and showed up. What attributes do shower-uppers have? What does it take to show up? What does it take? People who show up at appointments, what attributes do they have? Responsibility. Responsibility. Yep. What else? Motivation. Dedication. Good job. Okay. Absolutely. And the fact that she knows some stuff about prenatal care. What is that like? She knows she's supposed to eat, and she knows that there's enough of her that's a little worried about this smoking. What does that say about her? She's aware. Mm-hmm. What else? What about her thoughts about the baby? What is it? She cares, so she's caring. Uh-huh. Responsible. How about loving for her baby? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And one more. She knows that well, we got the marijuana, we got the eating. Okay, that's good. All right, great. Oh, she's reflective. Nice word. All right. So now you did, and if we were together, you would have seen I wrote all the words you said down, and I would have written them on a big piece of paper in front of the room. So, okay, you've helped me now. So now what if I say this to Tanya? Tanya, you are responsible, motivated, dedicated, aware, caring, loving, and reflective. What do you think about that? What if I said that to Tanya? Would that be better? Like, we didn't like the I'm so proud of you. I think that's great. Like that was, right? That kind of set me apart. But what if I just give her this? You're responsible, motivated, dedicated, aware, caring, loving, and reflective. What do you think Tanya would think of that? What do you think? You think she'd be affirmed? She might. Would she be a little possibly confused? Yes. Marina says, I would explain why she's like that. Exactly. Virtual sticker to Marina. Yes. Because that's exactly what we have to do. We don't just throw a word. We don't want to say, that's great, I think you're wonderful. But we don't also just want to barf an orange or word salad on this person, right? They're like, why are you saying I'm a responsible, like there's nothing to attach to. So if you look at that OARS sheet, that salmon colored sheet, there's some hints about how to form affirmations on there. So it's a formula, basically. It's like the way that you showed up here today shows that you're responsible, that you can organize yourself, that you're motivated to change things. Tanya, all that you've been doing throughout your pregnancy shows that you're a loving, caring person. Mm-hmm. The way that you've been talking about eating better and smoking less marijuana shows a level of awareness. You've got some smarts. So now do you see how that's, what do you think? What are you thinking about that? I was going to ask a closed question and I changed it to open. What do you think about that? That more, like Marina's suggesting, that more of a description of what you observe in somebody versus I think you're great. This is one of those big pills that we ask you to swallow in motivational interviewing. This one is a little, I never thought of it that way. It's more validating when the qualities are explained in context. Yeah. Yeah. It's much more meaningful. Yeah. And then do you see how Tanya could leverage those things? Like, wow, I've been reminded that I'm responsible and motivated and dedicated and aware and caring and loving and reflective. Those are things that help build a person's self-efficacy that is very helpful when they are supposed to be making all these behavior, thought, and attitude changes. Yeah. It would, yeah, like it helps them kind of move through the stages of change. Yeah. Move from that place like, I do have some confidence because I know I've got these things. Maybe I can, try this. Sure. Okay. So we're going to skip through this. So we're going to do a little, we're going to do some reflection practice. So what we're going to do here is we're going to, hang on one second. I want to do one thing before we go into this. This is, oh, sugar. I want to drill this. Literally, we're going to just make one up. So tell me something that you've heard from a patient that has both stuck talk and change talk in it. What have you heard recently? What have you heard recently from a patient? I know, but, or I could, but, I'd like to, blah, 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 but. What do you hear? What do you hear from your patients around quitting smoking? I would like to quit smoking, but I can't get away from certain triggers. Okay, so if somebody says, I would like to quit smoking, but I can't get away from certain triggers. All right, let's try asking an open question to get the person to talk more about the change. Okay, so if somebody says, I would like to quit smoking, but I can't get away from certain triggers. So where in that sentence, where is the change language? I'd like to quit smoking, but I can't get away from certain triggers. Where's the part that makes you think they're going to change? I'd like to quit. You got it. So what open question could you ask to just get them to talk more about the change part? Say more, describe, in what ways, tell me why you want to quit. Nice, Laura. What if, what are we drawn to in that sentence? Us helper kind of people. Ooh, it's just like so tempting. Ooh, I really want to ask about it. I really, really, really do. I really want to ask about it. What are the triggers? Right. What are we going to get? Well, so tell me about the triggers. Are we going to get a big old pile of stuck talk? Or are we going to get a big pile of change talk? all the reasons why they can't change. And here's the deal. Sorry, I have a really obnoxious clock that I put up this time of year to drive my family insane, and it works exceptionally well. You can hear how loud and dingly it is. So they hate it. When people say stuff out loud, they hear themselves saying it. So if I say to you, I'd like to quit smoking, but I can't get away from certain triggers, and then you invite me to talk more about the triggers, it is just further wearing down those neural pathways of how hard it's going to be and all these triggers and how they're so pervasive in my life. But if instead you invite me to talk about why I'd like to quit smoking, say more about wanting to quit smoking, now I'm hearing myself talk about the reasons why I want to quit smoking. And then when you reflect it or ask an open question about it or affirm it, they hear it again. So what do you want people hearing again and again and again? Their language about change or their language about being stuck? You don't want them hearing that over and over and over and over and over again. Then that becomes the tape, right? Instead of, these are the things that I want to change. So that's the open question. What could we affirm? We don't know much about this person, but what could we affirm? I would like to quit smoking, but I can't get away from certain triggers. You see a quality, a characteristic, something. The way that you're thinking about this shows what? People who are even willing to go there on the quit smoking train. What is it? What about them? We've worked with plenty of people who've tried to quit smoking. What does it take? Yep. We probably wouldn't say that to a patient. They'd be like, what? I'm moving from pre-contemplation to contemplation. What does it take? What does it take to consider commitment? What else? Courage. Vulnerability, awareness. Yeah. Leaning into a little bit of discomfort. Yeah. Sure. Willing to work hard. Sure. So yes, so that's an affirmation. And then let's take this sentence here. And I would like to quit smoking, but I can't get away from certain triggers. How would I reflect that? What if I just do a simple reflection? What part of that sentence would I want to repeat word for word? Simple reflection. That's all I can't think of anything else right now. I'm just going to do a simple reflection. So what would I do? What would I repeat? You want to quit smoking. Thank you, Laura. Exactly. Yeah. Now, why wouldn't I just repeat in a simple reflection? You have a lot of triggers. Do you see how I'm inviting? I can, and I'm gonna do that accidentally. It's just gonna happen. I'm gonna sometimes reflect, sustain, and I'm trying my best to, mostly reflect the change, but sometimes I accidentally reflect the sustain. And then you know what happens? I get a big old pile of sustain and I think like, oh my God, don't do that again. Right? When you can tune your ears to, is this leaning in the direction of change or is this leaning in the direction of stuck? Just those two things. And you think like, stop doing things that are getting them more stuck. Do things that get them unstuck. Ask about the change. If they're getting stuck because I'm facilitating a discussion about the stuck. And so how can I switch up and ask about the change? Or if they haven't even said anything about change, how can I get them to talk about that? How can I use open questions? What would it be like if you did decide to change? What might get better? When you know those darn, D-A-R-N, desire, ability, reason, need, you can ask about it. Well, what would you like to have happen? What could you do if you decided? What have you done in the past where change led to a positive outcome? Laura, L. Ruben, I just assumed your name was Laura. It's probably not. It could be Linda or Ludvilia. I don't know what L stands for, but L. Ruben, you have what have you done in the past where change led to a positive outcome? I really like that version of that question. I have not seen, and you guys tell me if this is completely wrong, but I have not seen the question of what's worked for you in the past being uncovering change language. It uncovers more exceptions than you can even, like, well, what worked for you in the past? Well, I got a lot of exercise when I was a college student and I didn't have any children or a job, or, it's just like, it's just gone, well, what was things like when, how were you able to eat healthy before? Well, it was this exception, and I didn't have this, and I didn't have this, and I didn't have that. It just never, but what L. Ruben has said here is, what have you done in the past where change led to a positive outcome? Like, it's like, what about you makes change possible? What do you have going for you that should you decide to make this change, you could do it? And that's a great question. So one thing to do with this, I would like to quit smoking, but I can't get away from certain triggers, is to just reflect in a simple way the change language. What if we want to let the person know that we heard their sustain? Because here's the deal. If we constantly ignore it, the person's gonna be like, you're not listening to me. And if we constantly ignore it and they feel like you're not listening to me, they're gonna keep bringing it up. So we have to give a little attention to the sustain, just not too much. So one way that we can do that, give a little attention to the sustain, but favor the change, is we can do what's called double-sided. You remember this from last time? So double-sided. So how could you double-side, I would like to quit smoking, but I can't get away from certain triggers? Look at your salmon-colored sheet. I would like to quit smoking, but I can't get away from certain triggers. Give it a try. On the one hand, that's a good start, Laura. On the one hand, what? Anybody? You have challenges to quitting, and on the other hand, what? You keep trying. Oh, Robin, that's very good. You just loaned the person change language. Yes. Do you know that I have, okay, there you are. Whew, I lost you guys. I couldn't find your faces because I'm trying to, all right, here we go. I want to screen share. Yes, perfect. That's double-sided. All right. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to continue with this. We're going to try some different kinds of reflections. And I found the slide I was looking for. So let's try this again. This is Patty. And we're going to do an open question, an affirmation, and reflection for her. So I want you to try it yourself. I want you to try an open question to get more change language. I want you to try an affirmation, and I want you to try any reflection, whether it's double-sided or a reflection of feeling, or a simple reflection of the change language, a reflection of feeling, or double-sided. I want you to try some kind of reflection, but you're going to have to find the change language. So this is a little low stakes test. Read about Patty and do all three of those things, just you, no group. You have 5 minutes. All right. So whether you got all of them or got a few of them, let's just see what you came up with. So this was a low stakes test, right? Like this was like nothing's going to happen. Nobody knows what you wrote or didn't write. But having a few minutes as an adult learner to just like really do some application is great for your adult learning brain. So what would you ask Patty in terms of an open question to use the skill of open questioning, that open-mindedness, to get her to lean in the direction of change? What would you ask her? What do you want her to say more about? How she got on probation? No. What do we want to know? What do we want to invite? Hey, Patty, let's talk about this. What'd you put? So much of this is you anticipating what the person's going to say, right? Like if I say this is going to invite them to say this. If I say this, it invites this. And you can learn when you are able to take in what the person says in response to what you say. That's how you can get better and better and better. You get constant feedback about how well motivational interviewing, how well what you're doing is working. Not a one of you is going to, oh, what would happen? What would help you feel less overwhelmed? What could you do to help them get ready for school? How do you get the tasks you're able to start and complete now? Okay. What are some things you could do so that you don't feel so overwhelmed? Okay. So what, all of those are open questions. They're all open questions. And where do they go? What of our questions do they ask? So I wasn't asking you to do who, like we just kind of assumed we knew Patty, and clearly Patty's got some depression or something, some mental health, something going on, right? So that's the what. If we ask questions about what could you do? What could you do? How could you do this? What would help? Are we in the why or are we in the how? What can you do? What can you do? What can you do? How could you do this differently? Are we in the why or are we in the how? Are we planning or are we trying to get Patty to even want to consider making a change? I would totally expect you to have gone where you went, which is you jumped to the planning. Mm-hmm. Are you interested in some of my ideas for some open questions? So what I would ask Patty when I look at this is because she's ambivalent, right? She's like, well, I know I'm supposed to do this. I just don't feel like myself, right? And that's what she's going to do. Like if you ask her like, well, what could you do else? What could you do? She's going to be like, I don't know. She's really down. She's got all this crap on her back. Like she's just not going to be like, oh, well, let me fix it this way, right? If it were that easy, she would have just fixed it. So I would have said, a suggestion would be to describe what you'd like to feel like, or say more about feeling like yourself. Say more about what it's like when you feel like yourself. What do you think about that in contrast to what could you do? How are you going to fix this? Why do we want to go there? Why do we go there so quickly? Because we just want it to get better. We just want it to get better. It's so hard for us when people aren't making it better. And motivational interviewing asks you to pull back, relax, chill out, get them wanting it. And then we'll move into how we will. Those questions that you ask are lovely. They're lovely, lovely open questions. Totally fair game, totally open questions, nothing wrong with them. They're just the only thing I would make a recommendation on is just that she's not ready for it yet. So what would you affirm in Patty? Using that scale of affirmation that we went through really quickly, what might you affirm about her? What does she have going for her? What are her values? What is she indicating? Where is she indicating a strength? Persistence. Nice. It shows commitment that you came in today. Yeah. Nice. You're persisting. You're every day you're doing the hard work of getting your kids to school. Right? She's making it happen, right? You care a lot about your kids and you're working hard to complete probation. And then what reflection? Like if she's ambivalent, right? She's got, so where is her just pick out her change language. It's very weird change language, but it's there. What would be a reason that she wants to change? What is she telling you? Nope. Well, yeah, yes, I will give you that. That she knows she's supposed to get her kids ready for school. She may need additional support and resources. That's part of planning. Very good. Planning. What part of her? What's the rub for her? What's the rub for Patty? What does she not like? Doesn't like not feeling like herself. Not there, Laura. Not you said it. You put it in right. Yes, that's where I got the idea. I got it from Laura. She doesn't like feeling. Yeah, she doesn't like that she's feeling down. So if we're gonna just reflect that, then we'd say that you don't like not feeling like yourself. You're sad about not feeling like yourself. You're really missing your usual self. So if we're going to do a double-sided, it would be, on the one hand, where's the part that's got her stuck? What's got her stuck? Overwhelmed, right? On the one hand, you're really overwhelmed, and on the other, you're eager to be yourself again. So we did feeling, we did a double-sided. Any metaphors coming to mind when you read about Patty? I'm not having any metaphors coming to mind. And I'm so bad about mixing metaphors. You feel stuck between a rock and a hard place, something like that. You're feeling stuck in the mud. Some days it doesn't feel like there's a light at the end of the tunnel, right? And I know that's just kind of sitting in her sustain a little bit, and yet that lets her know, I understand that, right? And then, that was a lot thrown at you. That was a real lot. So next time we're supposed to talk most specifically about SBIRT. Is that right, Sue?
Yes, and then how all of these skills play into that.
Grief intervention. Yep. So we're gonna, when we talk about SBIRT in January, or we're going to talk about screening and brief assessment. Those are processes. Those are just things we're going to like they're just processes. They're questionnaires. We're going to talk about what they are and how to score them. And then we're going to talk a little bit about brief intervention. And guess what? You're going to be so much better at doing brief interventions because you've had an exposure to motivational interviewing. Motivational interviewing is the jet fuel for a brief intervention. You can, like, people who do brief interventions who don't know motivational interviewing just go in there and say, like, well, I don't know, I guess you're supposed to quit drinking. So if you could do that, can you start that tomorrow? Right? Like, that's not going to, you know, that's not going to work. Right? And so these skills, we'll talk about how the skills that you've been developing around motivational interviewing can empower your brief intervention and can empower referrals to treatment. Thank you so much, Amy. The next webinar is January 6th. So on January 6th, we're going to take all that we've been learning and bring it forward. In the meanwhile, there are lots of things you can do to continue to develop your skills in motivational interviewing. If you go to the website where I'm from, the Great Lakes ATTC, Addiction Technology Transfer Center, we are your Addiction Technology Transfer Center, your Mental Health Addiction Technology Center, and your Prevention Technology Transfer Center. And we have all kinds of stuff on there about motivational interviewing. There's this thing called a tour of motivational interviewing. You can get credit for going through that. It's a 4-hour thing. Robin, you did that, right? I think you, as a refresher.
I did, and it was good. There's a small charge for it, but it's good. Yeah.
A small charge if you want the credits, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's free unless you want credits. And the small charges that if you need credits, like your licensure is coming up, it's $20, which is super cheap credits. Yeah. Yeah. So you could go there, you can look, you know, for things like that. There's lots of reading. You could just type in motivational interviewing, bazillions of things pop up. So thinking about ways to keep this fire at a slow, you know, burn is going to really help you. Talk about it with each other. Oh, I heard you asking an open question when you were talking on the phone to that. Well, you're probably not in the same office anymore, but that kind of stuff. Just talk about it, think about it, go through the packet that I gave you. There's some undone exercises in there. Lots of things to keep the learning alive. And then we'll talk again when it is not 2020. It will not be 2020. It will be a whole different year. It will be over. Done. So I look forward to talking to you then. All right. Thank you for your time, and I'll talk to you soon.